counted everything: days, hours, steps, 14 steps from my room to the door, 9 more to the street. Because counting meant I was still thinking, still planning, still alive. And on day 39, that counting finally got me out. It all started with a normal date, a guy who seemed completely normal, and one sentence I'll never forget: "You're not leaving." "What's up, everyone? Grab a seat. This one hits different. Let's go." I was 24. I had a job I liked. Barista. At a coffee shop in Portland, Oregon. The kind of place with mismatched chairs and a playlist that never repeated. I had a studio apartment I decorated with plants that I was terrible at keeping alive. A best friend named Priya, who I talked to almost every day. And a life that was small in the way that young people's lives are small before they expand into something bigger. I was happy. I want to say that clearly, because I think it matters. I was not in a vulnerable place. I was not isolated. I was not someone who could be easily manipulated into a situation. I was a normal 24-year-old woman living a normal life. And what happened to me can happen to anyone. And that is the most terrifying thing about it. His name was Aaron. He came into the coffee shop 3 or 4 times a week for about 2 months before he ever said more than his order. He was in his mid-30s, quiet, polite in a low-key way. He tipped well. He read actual books, not his phone, which I found interesting. He didn't flirt aggressively or make me uncomfortable the way some regulars did. When he finally asked if I wanted to get coffee somewhere else, which we both acknowledged was a slightly absurd thing to ask a barista, I laughed and said yes. We went to a place across town. It was a good date. He was smart and funny in a dry way, and he asked questions, and actually listened to the answers. I went home and texted Priya that I'd met someone interesting. We went on 4 more dates over the next 3 weeks. He was consistent. He texted when he said he would. He made plans and kept them. Nothing about him triggered any alarm I had, and I had alarms. I dated enough to know what red flags felt like. On our 6th date, he invited me to dinner at his house. He said he'd cook. It seemed like a natural next step. I told Priya where I was going and sent her his address. I remember doing that specifically. I was careful. I thought I was being smart. I was not smart enough for what Aaron actually was. The night at Change dinner was good. He'd made pasta from scratch, which I was genuinely impressed by. We talked for hours. Somewhere around 11 p.m., I said I should probably get going and stood up to find my bag. He said, "I don't think you're leaving." Not loudly, not threateningly. He said it the way you'd say, "I don't think it's going to rain." A calm statement of fact. And something in that calmness hit me harder than any aggression would have. My brain tried to reframe it as a joke. I laughed a little and said something like, "What?" And he just looked at me. I didn't find my bag that night. I understand now that he'd moved it while I was in the bathroom earlier. I didn't find my phone either, which had been in my bag. The front door had a deadbolt that required a key from the inside. I didn't know that when I came in. I know it sounds impossible that I didn't notice. You notice things differently when you're not looking for them. He showed me the room I'd be staying in. It was a spare bedroom, clean, with a bed and a window. The window had been sealed from the outside with screws I'd have needed tools to remove. He told me the rules in the same calm voice. I would stay in this room or in the common areas of the house when he allowed it. I would not scream. I would not try the doors or windows. He did not explain what would happen if I broke the rules. He didn't have to. The way he said it was explanation enough. He locked the bedroom door from the outside. I sat on that bed for a long time. I want to be honest about what I felt, because I think people imagine they'd immediately go into action hero mode, start screaming, try to break the window, fight. What I actually felt was a kind of total white static. Like my brain had encountered something so far outside its reference points that it just stopped processing for a while. Then slowly, the static cleared. And I started counting. Steps to the door. 4. The door opened inward. I could hear which way from the sound of the lock. The window screws? 6, evenly spaced. The ceiling light. 1 bulb, standard fitting. The bed frame? Metal, bolted together with a hex key, which meant the bolts could theoretically be removed if I had something to remove them with. I didn't have anything yet, but I was going to find something. That was night 1. I had 38 more to get through before I got my chance. I need to tell you how it worked, because I think people imagine captivity as constant terror, and it's not, or it wasn't for me. It was something stranger, and in some ways, harder. It was routine. Aaron had a job. He left every morning around 8 and came back between 5 and 6. During those hours, I had access to the kitchen and living room, but the front door was deadbolted, and the windows in the common areas had the same sealed modification as my bedroom. He had no neighbors close enough to hear anything useful. The nearest house was a quarter mile down a rural road I could see from the living room window but couldn't reach. He was not cruel in the ways people expect. He bought food I'd mentioned liking. He let me use the TV. He talked to me at dinner like a person, which was somehow more disturbing than silence would have been. The cognitive dissonance of someone who has taken away your entire life, asking you whether you prefer your chicken grilled or baked. What he was, I understood over time, was controlling in a way that had probably been building for years before I met him. This wasn't spontaneous. The house modifications, the inside deadbolt, the way he'd moved my bag so naturally and quickly. He had done this before, or had planned it so thoroughly it might as well have been. I don't know which is worse. I thought about Priya constantly. She had his address. She would have reported me missing within 24 hours. I knew that about her the way you know things about a person you've been close to for years. Which meant the police had his address. Which meant they'd been here, or would come. Which meant I needed to be alive and findable when they did. Surviving became a strategy. I ate. I slept. I did not give him reasons to escalate whatever this was. And every single day, when he left for work, I looked for the thing that was going to get me out. On day 11, I found it. Under the bathroom sink, behind a pipe, there was a small, flathead screwdriver. I don't know if he'd forgotten it, or if it had simply migrated there over years of normal life before whatever he'd become. I held it for a long time. Then I put it back exactly where I'd found it, in the exact same position, because I had learned very quickly that Aaron noticed things, small things, displaced things, and I was not going to use it until the moment was exactly right. I spent the next 27 days waiting for exactly right. During those days, I mapped everything I could. I knew his schedule down to the pattern of his footsteps. I knew that he checked my bedroom door twice, every night, once around 10 p.m. and once around 2 a.m. I knew that on Fridays he came home later, around 7, and that on those nights he had 1 or 2 drinks with dinner instead of none. I knew that the side door off the kitchen, different from the front door, had a different lock, a simpler one. A privacy lock that could be opened from the inside with a flathead screwdriver inserted into the small slot on the handle. I knew because I'd examined every inch of that house during the hours he was gone. Slowly, carefully, replacing everything exactly as I'd found it. By day 35, I had a plan. By day 37, I had refined it to the point where I'd walked through it in my head so many times it felt like memory instead of planning. By day 38, I was ready. I just needed one specific thing to happen. On day 39, it happened. He came home at 7:20 that Friday, later than usual, which fit the pattern. He had 2 drinks with dinner. I counted from the sounds in the kitchen. We ate. He talked. I answered in the careful, measured way I'd learned, enough to seem present, not enough to provoke anything. He locked my door at 9:45. I waited until 1 a.m. His 2 a.m. check was the last obstacle. If I moved before it, he'd find the room empty, and I'd lose my window. If I moved after it, I'd have roughly 4 hours before he'd check again, which was more than enough time to reach a road, flag someone down, or find a house. At 1:59 a.m., I heard his footsteps in the hall, the familiar sound of the lock, the pause while he looked in, the sound of him walking back to his room. I gave it 10 minutes. I counted every second. Then I got the screwdriver from where I'd hidden it inside my pillowcase 11 days ago. I'd moved it there on day 28, when I was sure he wasn't going to find it. And I went to the bedroom door. The lock on my side was the same privacy lock style as the side door. I tested this theory on day 22 using a paperclip I'd found in the kitchen, just to confirm the mechanism. It had worked then. I needed it to work now. My hands were shaking. I want to tell you they weren't, because it sounds better. But they were shaking so badly I dropped the screwdriver once and caught it before it hit the floor and stood there for 30 seconds, not breathing. Then I steadied my hands the way I'd practiced, both hands, one guiding the other, and I inserted the screwdriver into the slot. The lock turned. The door opened. The hallway was dark. His bedroom door was closed. I could hear nothing from inside it. I moved down the hall in the way I'd planned, close to the wall where the floorboards were less likely to flex, to the kitchen, to the side door. 14 steps total. I had counted 14 steps so many times in my head that I could have done it blind. The side door lock took 3 seconds. The cold air hit me so hard when the door opened that I almost made a sound. It was October. I was in socks and a t-shirt. I did not care even slightly. 9 steps to the edge of the property. Then I ran. I ran down that rural road in the dark in my socks, and I did not look back. Not once. I decided that before. I was not going to look back, because looking back was for movies, and I was trying to survive. I ran until I saw lights, and the lights were a house. And I went to the door, and I knocked so hard I hurt my hand. A man in his 60s opened the door. He took one look at me. Barefoot by then. One sock lost somewhere on the road, shaking, wild-eyed. And he said, "Come inside," before I said a single word. His wife called 911. He put a blanket around my shoulders and didn't ask me any questions. Just sat next to me and said, "You're safe now," over and over until the police came. I have thought about that man and his wife many times since, about the fact that they just opened the door, about how different everything might have been if they hadn't. The police arrived in 11 minutes. Aaron was arrested in his bed 40 minutes after that. He didn't resist. According to the officer who told me about the arrest later, he looked almost unsurprised, like he'd been waiting for it, the way you wait for something you always knew was coming. Priya had reported me missing on day 2. The police had gone to Aaron's address on day 3. He'd answered the door calmly, invited them in, shown them around the parts of the house that looked completely normal. Living room, kitchen, his bedroom. My bedroom door was locked, and he told them it was a storage room, and he'd lost the key. They noted it. They didn't push it. I have complicated feelings about that, which I am still working through. Aaron was charged with unlawful imprisonment and a series of additional charges that I won't detail here. He pled not guilty. The trial took 4 months. I testified for 2.5 hours. The screwdriver was entered into evidence. The inside deadbolt mechanism was photographed and documented. An investigator found evidence that I was not the first, a detail I learned in the middle of the trial, in a courtroom, which is not the ideal place to learn something like that. He was convicted. He is in prison. I track his parole eligibility date the way I used to count steps, carefully, consistently, because information is the only control I have over that particular fact. People ask me how I'm doing now, and I tell them the truth, which is better than I was, not as good as I'll be. I have a therapist I trust. I have Priya, who flew to Portland the night I was found and stayed for 2 weeks and has never once treated me like I'm fragile, which is exactly what I needed. I have a new apartment with a front door I chose specifically for its lock, which I can tell you everything about because I researched it for 3 weeks before signing the lease. I sleep with the light on. I'm working on that. What I want you to take from this, if you take anything, is the counting. Whatever situation you are in, whatever has been taken from you, your mind is still yours. The information you gather, the patterns you learn, the plan you build one careful piece at a time, nobody can lock that in a room. Nobody can screw that shut from the outside. I got out because I paid attention for 38 days and waited for day 39. There is always a day 39. If this story hit you, if any part of it felt real, please know that resources exist for survivors of abduction and unlawful imprisonment. You don't have to have escaped to reach out. You just have to make one call. And if you made it to the end of this video, thank you, genuinely. Drop a like if this story moved you. Subscribe if you want more, and I'll see you in the next one.